Hey folks, welcome back to Creepy Horror Stories. My name is Bogdan, or you can call me Rook. And tonight I have prepared some three crazy stories for you. So the first one is about doorbell camera that shows a man that never left for work. And for the other two, I'm gonna leave. So you stay until the very end and find out what's happening. So yeah, if you enjoyed tonight's episode, guys, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Enjoy into the video.
The doorbell camera showed me coming home. Before I left, the clip was only 9 seconds long. That is what made it hard to argue with. If it had been longer, I could have found some mistake in it. A bad angle, a compression glitch, someone with my jacket, someone who walked like me, because everyone walks like someone if you stare long enough. But 9 seconds does not give you room to negotiate. The camera woke up, the porch light came on, and I walked up to my own front door. 6 hours before I left work, I found the clip on a hidden forum that sold neighborhood camera dumps. Most of it was boring in the way stolen things are usually boring. Delivery drivers, raccoons, people checking locks, headlights sliding over wet streets. Then I saw my house. Then I saw myself. The timestamp said 6:13 p.m. My phone said 12:08 p.m. I was still sitting in the break room at work, holding a vending machine sandwich I suddenly could not swallow. In the video, future me reached into his pocket. He pulled out a key. Then he stopped and looked directly into the camera. I was not supposed to be on that forum. That is not a moral confession. It is a practical one. Some places online are built so that every click feels like agreeing to a contract no one lets you read. The forum was called Porchlight. It had no logo, no banner, no dramatic hacker graphics, just a grid of street names, device brands, timestamps, and little colored dots that meant someone had recently uploaded a camera batch. People used it for ugly little reasons, checking if a spouse really came home late, finding license plates, watching package thieves, spying on neighbors who did not know their cheap smart doorbells had been scraped, mirrored, or cracked by people who treated suburban privacy like a puzzle game. I got in because my old duplex kept getting hit by porch pirates. At least that is the version I told myself. The honest version is that I liked watching the neighborhood when it did not know it was being watched. I liked the clean distance of it. The camera angle made everyone look slightly guilty, even when they were just carrying groceries. That day at work, I searched my street because a delivery app said a package had been dropped at my front door. It had not. I checked the normal doorbell app first. Nothing. The camera had been offline since morning, which was not unusual. My landlord bought the cheapest devices possible and called them security upgrades. Then I opened Porchlight in a private tab on my phone. I typed the street name. 8 camera batches appeared. Mine was the third. Device, front entry, upload source, unknown mirror, clips, 41. The first 40 clips were normal. A mail carrier, a kid on a scooter, wind lifting the corner of the doormat. My neighbor Mrs. Klein dragging her blue recycling bin with the anger of someone who had been betrayed by trash pickup. Clip 41 had not happened yet. I know how that sounds. I watched it 12 times, trying to make it happen in a normal way. Maybe the timestamp was wrong. Maybe the site used a different time zone. Maybe someone had changed the device clock. But the porch light in the clip was on, and mine did not come on during the day. The windows behind the camera reflected evening. A car passed with headlights on. The little maple tree beside the walkway was dark against the sky. And there I was, same jacket, Same work pants. Same chipped black key fob hanging from my belt loop. I looked exhausted in the clip. Not frightened. Exhausted. That bothered me more. Fear can be faked by a camera. Exhaustion is harder. Exhaustion means something already happened before the clip started. I downloaded the video. Then I watched it again with no sound because the break room vending machine kept humming over it. On the fourth silent replay, I noticed my future self's left hand. It was wrapped in a towel. White towel. Dark stain. Not black. Not in color. The clip was too compressed for that, but I knew what a hand looks like when someone is trying to keep blood inside it. I closed the tab. My manager, Danny, came in to heat up soup and asked if I had seen a ghost. I said I had a migraine. She said,
"Go home."
I almost did. That is the thing I still think about. If she had said anything else, if she had told me to finish the shift, or stop being dramatic, or take 10 minutes in the office, maybe I would have stayed. But she said exactly what the clip needed her to say. Go home. I looked at the time. 12:19 p.m. The clip was still almost 6 hours away, so I did the obvious thing. I did not go home. I told Danny I would sit in my car until the migraine passed. Instead, I drove to the other side of town and parked outside a grocery store. I kept the engine off. I kept my phone in my lap. I stared at the doorbell clip until the battery dropped under 20%. At 1:03, Porchlight updated. New clip available. Same device. Same camera. Timestamp. 2:44 p.m. The preview showed my front door in daylight. Empty porch. Then the frame shook. Not like wind. Like someone had bumped the camera from inside the wall. The video was only 4 seconds long. At the end, a voice came through the tiny speaker. It was mine.
Don't make me wait out here.
I was in my car 4 miles away when I heard it. I did not say it. Nobody was at my door. I checked the official doorbell app. Still offline. I checked Porchlight again. The clip had 3 comments. The first said, "Future batch." The second said, "Resident loop. Do not interact." The third was from an account named Stillframe. "If you saw yourself, leave the route alone." I tried to reply. My account posted before I finished typing. I didn't see anything. That was my username. That was my account. I had not pressed send. Stillframe replied immediately. "Then why are you parked by the grocery store?" I threw the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. Outside, people moved through the grocery store doors, carrying normal bags full of normal food, and I felt a sudden jealousy so sharp it was almost childish. They had errands. I had a timestamp. At 1:20, a white van pulled into the parking lot and stopped 2 spaces behind me. No logo, no side windows. A man in the driver's seat looked down at something, then up at my car. I started the engine. The van started too. I drove out of the lot carefully, too carefully, like a cop was watching. The van followed. At the light, I turned right without signaling. The van turned right. I turned into a pharmacy drive-through lane and kept going around the building. The van stopped at the entrance and waited. My phone buzzed on the floor. New clip available. I should have kept driving. Instead, I picked up the phone at the next red light. The new clip was not from my doorbell. It was from the grocery store parking lot. Camera, West Lot. Timestamp, 1:26 p.m. In the video, my car drove past the camera. The white van followed. Then another version of my car drove past 15 seconds later. Same plate, same dent in the bumper. In the second car, I was looking straight ahead with both hands on the wheel. No van behind me. The clip ended with a text overlay generated by the camera system.
Recognized resident. Route divergence detected.
That was when I understood the camera was not just showing home. It was showing paths. I drove to my friend Marcus's apartment because he lived in a building with no smart doorbell, no hallway cameras, and a landlord who still collected rent checks in a box by the office. Marcus was the kind of friend you call when you need someone to believe you for 5 minutes before asking questions. He opened the door, holding a guitar pick between his teeth. I said, "I need to sit somewhere with no cameras." He took the pick out of his mouth.
Good afternoon to you too.
I pushed past him and stood in his living room. He had a thrift store couch, 2 lamps, a dead fern, and a television so old the screen bowed outward. No smart speakers, no cameras, no baby monitors, no tablet on the counter, listening for a wake word. For the first time all day, my chest loosened. Then his microwave beeped. Not once. 3 times. Marcus looked at it.
I didn't put anything in there.
The microwave display said 6:13. I pulled it from the wall so hard the cord snapped one of the plastic tabs off the outlet plate. Marcus said my name. I told him everything. Not well, not in order. I showed him the clips, the comments, the grocery lot footage. He watched with the flat, serious face people get when disbelief would be more work than fear.
So don't go home.
He said, "I'm not."
No, I mean ever.
That should have sounded absurd. It sounded reasonable. At 2:44 p.m., my phone buzzed again. The timestamp from the second clip. I did not open it. Marcus did. He said,
It's your porch.
The video showed my front door in daylight, exactly like before. Empty porch, camera shake. Then my voice through the speaker.
Don't make me wait out here.
But this time, there was another sound behind it. A knock. Not from the front door. From inside Marcus's apartment. We both heard it in the room and in the clip at the same time. 1 knock, then 2, then 3. Marcus's bedroom door was closed. He lived alone. He grabbed a kitchen knife. I grabbed the floor lamp because fear makes everyone choose stupid weapons. We stood in the hallway. The bedroom door handle turned. Slowly, like someone on the other side was testing how much noise it made. Marcus whispered.
No.
The handle stopped. My phone buzzed again. New device found. It was not porch light. It was the official Doorbell app. My home camera had come back online. Live feed available. I opened it before Marcus could stop me. The feed showed my porch. Evening light. Not daylight. The timestamp in the corner said 6:13 p.m. 4 hours ahead. Future me stood at the front door with a towel wrapped around his left hand. He was not looking at the camera anymore. He was looking past it, into the glass of the storm door, where the reflection of the porch should have been. The reflection showed Marcus's hallway. It showed us standing outside his bedroom door. It showed the handle turning. Future me lifted his bloody hand and pressed one finger to his lips. Then the bedroom door opened. No one came out. The room was dark. Marcus reached around the frame and hit the light switch. His bedroom was empty, except for the window. It was open. Marcus lived on the 3rd floor. There was no fire escape. On the inside of the glass, written in condensation that should not have existed in April, were 4 words: "Leave the route alone." Marcus did not want me there after that. I do not blame him. He said it badly. People usually do when terror makes them selfish. He said maybe the clips followed me. Maybe his apartment was not safe because I had brought the root inside. Maybe if I left, the knocking would leave too. He apologized while saying it. That made it worse. I left at 3:18 p.m. Not for home, for the river trail, because it had no houses facing it, and the city had removed the old security cameras after teenagers kept stealing them. I walked with my phone powered off in my pocket, though I had learned by then that off was a suggestion cameras did not respect. Every reflective surface felt dangerous. Store windows, car doors, puddles, the black screen of my dead phone. At 4:02, I passed a jogger with a chest-mounted camera. He did not look at me. His camera did. My phone, still powered off, vibrated. I took it out. The screen was black. Then white text appeared. 2F, Smart Device System Voice. Clip saved before event completion. The phone turned itself on. New clip available. I laughed then. Not because it was funny, because every machine in the city had become a mouth, and I was tired of pretending I could cover them all. The clip was from the jogger's camera. Timestamp 4:03 p.m. It showed the back of my head as I walked away. Then I stopped. In the video, the future version of me turned around. The jogger kept running toward him. Future me said,
Do you have the time?
The jogger checked his watch. The watch screen flashed 6:13. Then the jogger looked up and screamed. The clip ended before I saw why. I turned around on the trail. The real jogger was still approaching, maybe 50 yards away. I stepped off the path and hid behind a maintenance shed until he passed. He never saw me. He never checked his watch. For one small moment, I thought I had beaten it. Then his watch beeped as he passed the shed. He stopped. He looked down. I could not see the screen from where I was, but I saw the reflection in his sunglasses. My front door. Evening. Me on the porch. 6:13. The jogger took off running. Away from me. Away from the route. Or deeper into it. By 5 o'clock, the sky was turning the color from the first clip. Not dark yet, but tired. I sat under the river bridge and used Marcus's portable charger, which I had stolen by accident or survival, depending how generous you feel. Porchlight had locked my account. Reason, resident loop abuse. Stillframe had sent me a private message. You have 3 choices. Let the route finish. Give it another resident. Lose the address. I wrote back. What does that mean? The reply came 1 second later. You know what a door is for. I wrote again. Who are you? The typing indicator appeared, vanished, appeared again. Then Stillframe sent a file. It was not a video. It was a spreadsheet exported as plain text, the kind of thing you get when somebody wants data to look less emotional than it is. Rows of addresses, device IDs, first sighting, road completion, resident outcome. Some addresses had 1 line, some had 5 or 6. A townhouse in Ohio had 9 completion attempts over 3 months. A bungalow in Nevada had a note beside it that said, resident accepted substitute. A duplex in Pennsylvania said address lost, structure condemned, no further footage. My street was near the bottom. My unit number had 3 fields filled in already. First sighting, front entry, 6:13 p.m. Resident divergence, grocery west lot, 1:26 p.m. Witness contamination, Marcus Hale, interior knock. I had never told Porchlight Marcus's last name. I typed, what is a route? Stillframe answered, an address trying to keep its resident. I stared at that sentence until it stopped looking like English. Then another message came. Doorbell cameras do not create it. They show it. Smart locks feed it. Delivery apps feed it. Utility tickets feed it. Every system that says this person belongs at this door makes the route stronger. I thought of all the tiny conveniences I had accepted without thinking. Saved addresses, auto-filled delivery notes, guest Wi-Fi, the app that told the landlord when my smoke detector battery was low, the grocery account that suggested cat food even though I had no cat because the previous tenant did. This was not one hacked camera. It was 1,000 small systems agreeing where I should be. I typed, "How do I lose the address?" Still frame did not answer for almost a minute. When the message came, it was shorter than I wanted. "Make it fail to recognize you." I looked at my reflection in the black phone screen. Same face, same jacket, same key, same day being pulled toward the same door. I wrote, "How?" The reply, "No key, no resident voice, no witness, no camera, no one saying you belong." Then, "And do not bleed inside." I looked at my left hand, still uncut then, still ordinary. That warning had arrived before the wound, which made it feel less like advice and more like a dare the day had already accepted. I asked still frame why they were helping me. The answer was immediate. I used to live at 118 Marigold Lane. I searched the spreadsheet. 118 Marigold Lane was one of the old rows. Route completion, accepted substitute. Resident outcome, not returned. I asked who substituted. Still frame sent a single image. A doorbell frame. Night. A woman on a porch holding grocery bags in both hands. Her face was turned toward the camera, caught between annoyance and fear. Behind her, in the dark glass of the storm door, stood another version of her. Inside the house, smiling. The file name was Mom Came Home. I did not ask anything else. I did not. Not then. I thought a door was for entering, leaving, keeping weather out, keeping people out. I'd never thought of a door as a promise a house makes about where you belong. At 5:22, my landlord called. His name was Mr. Voss, and he owned 16 rental properties with the weary confidence of someone who believed every problem could be solved by blaming a tenant. He asked if I had changed the locks. I said no. He said someone had opened a maintenance ticket from my unit. Issue, front door refusing resident. I said, "Do not go inside." He said he was already there. In the background, I heard my porch chime, not through his phone, through mine. My official doorbell app opened by itself. Live feed, 5:24 p.m. Mr. Voss stood on my porch, squinting at the doorbell with his phone held to his ear. He looked smaller from above, less like a landlord, more like a man standing somewhere that had noticed him.
"I don't see anything wrong,"
he said. Behind him, at the edge of the frame, another figure stood just off the walkway. Me, not future me at 6:13. Current me, same hoodie, same jeans, same phone in hand. The copy of me on the feed raised his phone. I raised mine under the bridge without meaning to. The copy knocked on the porch rail. The sound came through my speaker and echoed under the bridge. Mr. Voss turned. The copy was gone. I told him to leave again. He called me a word I will not repeat and unlocked the front door. The camera glitched. When the feed returned, the door was open and Mr. Voss was standing in my living room. Everything behind him looked normal. My cheap couch, the lamp, the shoes by the wall. Then he said,
"Why is there water on the floor?"
There was no water in my apartment when I left that morning. The camera angle changed, not physically. Doorbell cameras do not turn around, but the feed showed the inside hallway, as if the camera had moved through the door and was now watching from behind Mr. Voss. A trail of wet footprints led from my kitchen to the front door. Barefoot. My size. Mr. Voss said.
Hello?
The bedroom door opened. He dropped his phone. The feed cut. I called him back. No answer. I called the police. I hung up before the dispatcher finished asking the address, because I understood what I would be doing. I would be sending more witnesses to confirm the event. More cameras, more records, more routes. The address wanted attention. I thought about Stillframe's third option, lose the address. At 5:46, I walked to a hardware store near the bridge and bought a hammer, a screwdriver, and the cheapest black spray paint they had. The cashier asked if I had a project. I said yes. That was true, in the way a grave is a landscaping project. Before I went back, I tried to make myself harder for the route to recognize. It sounds childish now, like putting on a disguise in front of a thunderstorm. I bought a gray sweatshirt from a discount rack and changed in the store bathroom. I threw my work shirt into the trash, then took it out again because the route knew my trash habits too, probably. I turned the shirt inside out, tied it around a pipe under the sink, and left it there like a flag for a country I wanted to stop belonging to. I took my house key off the ring and held it over a storm drain outside the hardware store. For almost a minute, I could not let go. Keys have a stupid kind of power. A key says you have somewhere to return to, even when the place is bad, even when the rent is too high, and the neighbors fight, and the heat knocks in the walls all winter. A key lets you believe the world contains one door that will open for you. The root wanted that belief, so I dropped the key. It hit the grate once, bounced, and vanished into the dark below. My phone buzzed immediately. Key event recorded. Resident access reduced. I almost felt hope. Then another line appeared. Spare key available. I remembered the fake rock under the back steps, the one I had laughed at when I moved in because it was the least secure thing any landlord had ever done. The house remembered it too. I walked to a public restroom in the bus depot and practiced not saying anything. Stillframe's message had said no resident voice. I did not know if that meant the doorbell needed my voice, or if the root could use any spoken confirmation, any sentence that tied me back to the unit. A man at the next sink asked if I was finished with the soap. I nodded. He stared at my bleeding palm, not yet wrapped, and said,
You need help?
I shook my head. He backed away. Good. Let people think I was rude. Let them think I was high or dangerous or crazy. Concern had almost trapped me at Marcus's apartment. Help was another kind of camera. Outside the depot, the public announcement speakers crackled. For a second, instead of bus departures, they played my doorbell chime. Then, my own recorded voice, thin through the speakers.
Package delivered.
I had recorded that voice clip months earlier as a joke when setting up the doorbell app. A stupid custom alert. My own voice saying package delivered whenever motion stopped at the porch. I had forgotten it existed. The route had not. People waiting for the bus looked around, confused. I kept walking. At the corner, I passed a delivery driver staring at his tablet. He looked up as I went by.
U214?
He asked. I did not answer. He turned the tablet toward me anyway. The screen showed my front porch with a delivery route pinned to it. Under the address was a note I had written months earlier and forgotten about. Leave by door if resident does not answer. Only someone had added a second line below it. Resident always answers eventually. The driver frowned.
App says you're refusing delivery.
I stepped back. Then Market refused. He tapped the screen. The tablet made an error sound.
It won't let me.
Behind him, in the side mirror of his van, I saw my front door again. Not reflected from anywhere possible. Just there, small and bright in the glass, waiting like a thumbnail. The porch light was already on. The time in the tablet corner was 6:13. I walked away faster. The driver called after me.
Hey, do you want your package or not?
I did not look back. If I had, I think the van would have been in my driveway. I reached my street at 6:02. I did not approach from the sidewalk. I went through the alley, climbed the back fence, and entered through the shared yard behind the duplex. My left hand was still clean. That mattered to me because of the towel in the clip. The back door had a normal lock. No keypad, no camera, just a scratched brass deadbolt and a handle that stuck in winter. For 1 second, I felt grateful for every cheap thing my landlord had refused to replace. Then my key would not turn. I tried again. The lock was not jammed. It was resisting me. That is the only way I can describe it. Metal does not have intention, but the key stopped halfway with a soft, final pressure, as if the house had taken a breath and held it. From inside, something clicked. Not the back door, the front, the smart lock. It spoke in its tiny, cheerful voice.
Welcome home.
I stood in the yard with my key still stuck in the back door and understood the address had recognized me from the wrong side. The official Doorbell app opened on my phone. Live feed, 6:03 p.m. The camera showed the empty front porch. Then a hand came into frame from inside the house and wiped condensation off the glass storm door. My hand, left hand, wrapped in white. I looked down at my real left hand, still clean, still mine. The route had moved ahead without me. I pulled the key out and went to the kitchen window instead. The house looked ordinary from the back. That almost broke me. I wanted it to look wrong. I wanted the windows black, the walls breathing, something I could point to and say, that is the monster. Instead, the recycling bin was tipped over. The neighbor's dog barked once, then stopped. My kitchen window was cracked open. I never left it open. I climbed through and cut my left palm on the frame. White hot pain, then blood. I looked at my hand. The clip needed a towel. I refused to get one. Blood dripped onto the kitchen floor. The same floor Mr. Voss had said was wet. My palm had smelled like ozone and old rain. The front door was closed. From inside, I could hear the doorbell speaker outside, playing a tiny loop of static. I walked through the living room. Every step felt rehearsed. Shoes by the wall, lamp leaning, couch blanket half on the floor. I had seen enough camera footage that my own home felt like a set built for me to enter. The official app buzzed. Live feed, 6:11 p.m. I did not open it. The doorbell chime rang. Once, then again. Then my own voice came through the speaker.
Don't make me wait out here.
I took the hammer and smashed the router first. The speaker kept playing. I smashed the base station plugged near the door. The speaker kept playing. I opened the door. The porch was empty. The doorbell camera stared at me. I lifted the spray paint and blacked out the lens. For 1 second, everything stopped. No chime, no static, no phone vibration. Then something knocked from inside my bedroom. 1 knock, 2, 3. I looked down at my bleeding hand. The blood had soaked my sleeve. It looked like a towel wrapped around my palm. The root was not making me do things. It was waiting for me to do the nearest version. That is how it gets you. Not mind control, not prophecy. It shows you the cheapest path and lets panic pay the difference. I went to the bedroom door. Behind it, someone breathed with my lungs. I said, "No." The breathing stopped. My phone lit up on the floor, though I had not dropped it there. New clip available. Camera, front entry, timestamp, 6:13 p.m. I opened the clip. It showed the porch. The light came on. I walked up to my front door. Only this time, the person on the porch was not me. It was Mr. Voss. He wore my jacket. His left hand was wrapped in a white towel. He reached into his pocket and pulled out my key. Then he looked into the camera through the black spray paint as if he could still see me. The bedroom door opened behind me. Inside was not my bedroom. It was my porch, night air, wet steps, a doorbell camera beside my face. On the other side of the bedroom door porch, Mr. Voss stood with my key in his hand. He looked terrified. For a moment, I almost helped him. Then he said in my voice,
Give me the address.
I understood still frame's second option then. Give it another resident. Mr. Voss had entered my apartment. The house had tried him on, but it still needed me to agree he belonged there. It needed a resident to recognize a resident. That is what smart locks do. That is what cameras do. They ask a system to decide who is allowed to come home. I stepped back from the bedroom doorway. I said, "I don't know him." The porch inside the bedroom stretched longer. Mr. Voss screamed my name. The doorbell chime rang so loud the apartment lights flickered. I said it again. "I don't know him." The bedroom door slammed. Every camera in the apartment died at once. I slept on the kitchen floor because I did not trust any room with a door. At 8:30 the next morning, police knocked. Real police, I think. They asked about Mr. Voss. His wife had reported him missing after he failed to come home from a maintenance call. I told them he had entered my unit and left. That was not exactly true. It was not exactly false. They asked if I had cameras. I showed them the broken equipment. One officer looked at the smashed router, the painted doorbell, the blood on the floor, and decided I was either a suspect or a victim. People are kinder when they cannot pick. They took a statement. They did not find Mr. Voss. Porchlight vanished from every link I had. Marcus changed his locks and stopped speaking to me for 2 weeks. When he finally called, he said his microwave still showed 6:13 whenever it rained. I moved out before the month ended. The lease company charged me for the broken doorbell. I paid it. Sometimes survival is insulting like that. I live in a building now with no smart lock, no lobby camera that works, and a landlord too cheap to replace the burned out porch bulb. I should feel safer. Most nights I do. But last week, a package came to the new address. No return label. Inside was the old doorbell camera, the one I spray painted black. The lens was clean. Taped to the back was a note in Mr. Voss's handwriting.
Recognized resident.
I buried it in a dumpster 3 neighborhoods away. That night, my phone buzzed at 6:13 p.m. I had no doorbell app installed, no porchlight account, no camera connected to anything I owned. The notification had no icon, only one sentence. Someone is at your door. I looked toward the hallway of my new apartment. There was no knock, not at first. Then the sound came from my closet. One knock, two, three, and from behind the door, through wood and winter coats and the dark little space where I keep things I do not use anymore, my own voice whispered,
I made it home before you.
The notification on my phone changed after that.
Resident waiting inside. I have not opened the closet.
The ice machine. Kept dispensing room. Keys for a floor that did not exist. I took the shift because rent was due on Friday and the listing promised cash at checkout. That is the shortest, honest version. The longer version is that once you start using the private staffing boards, your standards change fast. Normal job apps make you wait. Normal managers call during business hours and ask for references and availability and all the little polite lies people tell before anyone admits they need money. The boards I had been using were uglier and faster. Somebody posted a shift. You clicked. If they liked your face, your rating, or the fact that you could get there in under an hour, you got a text with an address and a pay number. Most of the jobs were bad in ordinary ways. Last-minute warehouse coverage, overnight inventory, cleaning a dental office because the regular crew quit, watching a self-storage gate from midnight to 6. The listing for the motel looked almost decent by comparison. Night auditor needed. Same night. Cash. Must stay until shift close. Experience preferred. Exit 61. Motel lodge. I had never worked a hotel desk, but I had worked front counters, late shifts, and places where the computer system was older than the people using it. That seemed close enough. The board was called Latchwork. That is not public. You do not find it by searching. Somebody sends it to you after you have already done work you probably should not have agreed to. The site was plain and ugly on purpose. White background, blue links, no branding. Every job sounded like it had been typed by a tired person holding a phone in one hand and a fire in the other. The text came 3 minutes after I clicked. Redwood Motor Lodge, 118 River Service Road. Ask for Celia. Do not be late. I almost laughed at the last line. If somebody is posting a same night shift to a hidden staffing board at 7:42 p.m., they do not have the luxury of standards. But when I pulled off exit 61 and saw the place, I understood why they were trying to sound strict. The Redwood Motor Lodge sat just off the service road behind a gas station, a boarded diner, and a stand of black pines that looked too dense for the flat little stretch of highway around them. It was one of those old motor lodges built before anyone figured out that loneliness could be made to look tasteful. 2 long wings, exterior room doors, U-shaped lot, office in the middle, ice machine on the second floor breezeway, vending alcove by the stairs, faded pool filled with gravel and weeds. The vacancy sign worked, but only on the VAC part. The rest flickered. Inside the office, the air smelled like industrial lemon cleaner and wet carpet that had dried too many times. There was a tourist rack with brochures nobody had taken, a coffee machine with a cracked plastic lid, a keycard encoder that looked older than me. Behind the counter sat a woman in a cardigan with a front desk smile she had clearly used up hours earlier. You from Latchwork? she asked. Yeah. You know, night audit. Enough to fake it for one shift. That got the first real expression out of her. Not a laugh. More like a wince she had already made before. That may be enough, she said. Depends what the building wants tonight. I thought she meant guests. That would not be the last time I made the normal interpretation first. Her name was Celia. Early 50s maybe. Hair pinned up too tight. Motel polo under the cardigan. Her right wrist wrapped in athletic tape under the sleeve. She moved fast without wasting motion, the way people do when they have been short-staffed long enough that every task has become muscle memory. She trained me in 26 minutes. How to check in cache walk-ins, how to reset the old key encoder when it froze, how to print folios from the ancient audit software, how to answer line 1 versus line 2, how to override the soda machine when it ate dollar bills, what to tell people if they asked about the pool. It's under repair, she said. Even though everyone can see it's full of rocks, people like a lie better when it sounds temporary. By 8:20, I thought the shift might actually be simple. The motel was half full, but quiet. A couple arguing in low voices outside 108. A guy in a reflective work vest dragging a duffel up the stairs. An older woman smoking by the vending alcove with a cigarette held away from her body like it had insulted her. Celia printed the occupancy sheet and slid it toward me. 26 sold, she said. 2 late arrivals, maybe. 1 no-show I want to hold until midnight in case they crawl in. Then she hesitated. Not long. Just enough for me to notice. She reached under the counter and took out a small motel drawer tray. Inside were key cards rubber-banded into stacks. 101s, 102s, 103s, and so on. Then one separate stack with only 3 cards in it. 307, 312, 319. The numbers were handwritten on old adhesive labels across the top edge, not printed. If the ice machine spits one of these, she said, do not scan it. Do not hand it to anybody. Just put it in this drawer. I looked at her, then at the cards. Why would the ice machine spit room keys? Because the machine is old. That answer feels lazy. It is. Use it anyway if you need to. She slid the drawer shut. Then she added, without looking at me, if a room calls and the number starts with 3, let it ring a while before you pick up. You have a 3rd floor? No. Then why would... Because the machine is old. Same tone, same flatness. This time, not lazy. Practiced. I should have pressed then. I know that now. But I had already learned something from the private boards. When a place is desperate enough to hire off a site like Latchwork, you do not always ask the question that would make them rescind the shift. So I nodded like old buildings, and weird routines were still inside the category of tolerable. Celia left at 8:47. Before she went, she put her hand on the office door and looked back into the room like she had forgotten something important. Then she said, if line 1 rings twice after 2 o'clock, unplug it for a minute before you answer. Why? Because if I tell you the real reason, you'll spend the whole night listening for it. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. Then she was gone. The office settled around me. Fluorescent hum. Old mini fridge under the counter kicking on and off. Ice machine compressor starting somewhere above and outside, then stopping, then starting again. A motel after dark has a very specific kind of quiet, not peace, not sleep. It is more like the building is holding dozens of separate little lives at arm's length and trying not to let them touch. TV glow under curtains, door latches, one cough through plumbing, car doors, someone dragging a suitcase with a broken wheel. You hear everything just enough to know you are alone with too many other people. At 9:14, a man in a road crew jacket came in asking for extra towels and directions to the closest bar that was still open. At 9:31, the woman by the vending machine wanted quarters. At 10:02, one of the late arrivals showed up with 3 kids asleep in the back seat and a look that said she had been too tired to cancel the reservation she knew she wouldn't use. By 10:40, I had started to believe the strange warnings were just how every place like this talked about its older systems. Every rundown building has mythology. Bad breaker, bad pipe, bad stairlight. People give names to the thing they're too tired to fix. Then the desk phone rang. Not line 1, the internal line. The little display did not show a room number. It only flashed EXT. I answered with the motel greeting Celia had shown me. There was no voice for the first few seconds, just a low mechanical hum. Then a man said, very politely, "Could I get 2 more bath towels for 307? I stared at the receiver. "I'm sorry," I said. "What room?" 307. Not irritated, not confused, like he was answering the first question wrong on purpose so I could ask the real one. "There isn't a 307 here." Silence. Then the same voice, with the same level politeness. "You said that last night too." The line went dead. I put the handset down and immediately picked it back up again to hear the dial tone, because that is the kind of stupid ritual people do when they still believe a machine can apologize for what just happened. My first explanation was easy. Prank. Somebody on the second floor calling from a cell phone through the office number, or a guest using the room line from one of the real rooms and lying about the number because the motel had already taught them its own private joke. I stepped outside and looked up at the second floor breezeway. The ice machine sat in its little recessed alcove between the vending machine and the stair rail, lit by one insect-blown tube light. Doors along the top row stayed shut. Curtains glowed here and there. A TV flashed blue through one gap. Nothing about the place looked playful. At 10:49, room 214 called. A man this time. Heavy voice, tired and already annoyed. "You got people running around over my head?" I glanced at the occupancy sheet. 214 was on the top floor. "No, sir," I said. "You're on the second floor." "Then tell whoever's dragging that cart to knock it off." I told him I would check. He hung up without answering. I went upstairs because not going would have felt worse. The second floor breezeway smelled like ozone, cigarette smoke, and machine ice. The compressor in the alcove had just shut off, leaving behind that heavy little silence appliances make when they stop asserting themselves. I walked the length of the corridor. 214 sat under a buzzing light with the chain latch engaged inside. No voices above, no footsteps, no cart. I stood there long enough to feel stupid, then turned back toward the office. That was when the ice machine coughed. Not dispensed. Coughed. A wet, choking grind, then the rattle of something plastic hitting the metal tray. I stopped. The sound was so specific, my brain already knew what I would find before I looked. A key card sat alone in the ice chute tray. It was beaded with meltwater, though nobody had scooped any ice. 307. Same handwritten label as the cards in Celia's drawer. My first thought was not supernatural. It was mechanical. There had to be some slot above the machine where maintenance stashed cards, some cracked panel connecting the alcove to the office key rack, some stupid, cheap motel shortcut, old enough that everyone stopped noticing it. I took the key with 2 fingers. It was colder than it should have been. Not freezer cold. Outdoor metal railing at midnight in winter cold. I looked up, half expecting a hand to withdraw through a gap in the wall. Nothing. The vending machine hummed. The pines beyond the lot moved. Once in a wind, I could not feel where I stood. Back in the office, I opened Celia's drawer and added the 307 card to the little stack. At 11:03, the internal line rang again. This time, the display read 312. I stared at it until the 5th ring. Then I answered. "Front desk." Another polite voice. Female. Older, maybe. "The ice is melting faster tonight," she said. "Could you send up a fresh bucket before the compressor goes quiet?" I said nothing, because my body had chosen that response before my brain caught up. She filled the silence herself. "If you're new, the machine is on your left when the elevator opens." Then the line clicked off. I unplugged line 1, even though it was not line 1 ringing. That felt weakly useful. At 11:17, Celia texted. "Everything quiet." I looked at the office, the dead internal line, the old key drawer, the night outside the glass. Then I typed, 214 says footsteps over him, 307 and 312 called. Ice machine gave me a key. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Her reply came slower than I wanted. "Put the cards in the drawer. Do not scan them. Do not send service upstairs. Make it to audit close, and I'll double the cash." That was not the answer of a woman dealing with a prank. I wrote back, "What is upstairs?" No answer. At 11:42, a woman came into the office wearing a denim jacket over sleep clothes and motel slippers, hair tied back badly, phone in one hand. "My husband went to get ice 20 minutes ago," she said. "Did you see him come down?" "What room?" 214. That hit me a half second before the rest of it did. The guy who called about footsteps. That was him. She nodded toward the breezeway. He said the machine was making that noise again, and he just grabbed some. He didn't take his phone. I told her I had not seen him come back down. She looked at my face and registered something there. What? Nothing. That wasn't nothing. I almost said maybe he stepped outside to smoke, even though I had never smelled smoke on him, and the lie would have insulted both of us. Instead, I said I would check the corridor and the parking lot. She did not leave. "What's your name?" she asked. "Evan." Evan. If he was messing around, he'd answer by now. I said I understood. I did not yet. But I was starting to understand the shape of the night I had agreed to. I checked the parking lot first. Empty except for idling trucks, 2 late check-ins, and the green soda machine buzz leaking from the vending alcove. Then I checked the second floor breezeway again. No sign of him. But the ice machine tray now held 2 cards, 307, 312, both wet, and 1 plastic motel ice bucket sat on the concrete directly below the alcove light, full to the brim and slowly spilling onto the walkway. I knew then that if I called the police too early, I would sound insane in exactly the wrong way. Not scared, not frantic, detailed, specific. That kind of crazy makes people slow down around you. So I did the next stupid thing. I went back into the office and pulled up the security camera grid. 4 cameras, parking lot, office, first floor corridor, second floor corridor. The second floor feed was static heavy, but usable. The angle caught the breezeway from one end, looking past the ice machine alcove toward room 219. I rewound 10 minutes. There he was, the husband from 214, stepping out in jeans, t-shirt, plastic motel bucket in one hand. He walked to the alcove. He bent toward the machine. Then the feed rippled once, top to bottom, like somebody had dragged a magnet down the monitor glass. When the image settled, the corridor was longer. Not obviously. Not enough that you would scream. Just long enough that the ice machine alcove was no longer near room 219. There was more hallway after it. More doors. Darker lighting. Older carpet pattern. Like the camera had learned a little extra architecture and decided not to mention it. The man stood at the edge of that wrong stretch, holding the bucket and looking down it. He did not run. He did not flinch. He stepped forward like he had finally remembered where he was supposed to go. Then the feed snapped back to normal. Empty corridor. No man. No bucket. I watched it 6 more times. It did not change. When I looked up from the monitor, the woman from 214 was still in the office doorway. I do not know how long she had been there. Maybe she saw my face. Maybe that was enough. "Tell me," she said. So I did the most honest thing I had done all night. "I don't know how to tell you without sounding crazy." She nodded once. "Try me." I considered lying anyway. Then line 1 rang. Not the internal line. Line 1. Once. Twice. I remembered Celia's instruction, unplugged it, counted to 10, plugged it back in, and picked up. "Redwood front desk." Celia's voice came low and rushed. "Did anyone from a real room go up after the machine?" "1 of 214. I heard her curse under her breath. "Listen to me carefully. Do not take towels. Do not take ice. Do not answer service requests. If his wife is there, keep her downstairs." "What is upstairs?" Silence long enough that I thought the line had died. Then, "The motel used to have 3 floors. Used to. Fire in 2004. 3rd floor got condemned before that, actually. Old owners kept renting it anyway for cash. Fire marshal shut it. Brand paid people to forget. They rebuilt the roofline and renumbered everything below. 2 floors on paper ever since." "That doesn't explain." "No, it doesn't." She sounded tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "Sometimes on sold-out nights, or wet nights, or nights when the audit rolls over wrong, the old service cycle starts again. Calls, keys, ice, towels, wake-up requests. If nobody answers, it usually fades by dawn." "Usually? Did you take anything up?" "No." "Did he?" I looked toward the office door, where the woman from 214 stood very still. "He took a bucket." Celia made a sound I had only ever heard from people who already knew the cost of what they were about to say. "Then the floor thinks it's open. You're telling me a burned 3rd floor is checking guests in? I'm telling you not to give it more than it already got. That is not better." "No," she said. "It isn't." I asked if this had happened before. She said, "Enough times that I quit 3 months ago and still come back when they can't fill the shift." Then she gave me one more instruction. "If you have to go up, don't go empty-handed and don't say a room number out loud." Why would I have to go up? Because someone always does. The line clicked dead. I stood there with the phone in my hand and felt the night rearrange itself. Before that call, I had still been choosing between explanations. After it, I was choosing between consequences. The woman from 214 asked very quietly, "Is my husband upstairs?" For a second, lying looked like mercy. I said, "I think he went somewhere the building should not have." She stared at me like she was deciding whether to slap me or follow me. "Then get him back." Not shrill, not dramatic, just tired in the way people get when fear has already simplified the room. I told her to stay in the office with the door locked. She said no. I said if she came with me and I lost track of both of us, I would never forgive myself. That worked, maybe because I sounded more certain than I felt. I went into the service closet behind the office and grabbed the first things my hands found: 2 bath towels, 1 pillow, still in plastic, a fresh ice bucket, the heavy ring of MasterCards. I almost dropped the towels when I realized what I was doing, giving it service. Exactly what Celia said not to do. But I understood her instruction a second later. Do not go empty-handed, because if the floor thinks you're staff, it lets you move. If it thinks you're only another guest, it keeps you. I took the items because fear makes quick students of people. The elevator did not show a 3 when I pushed the button, only 1 and 2. It came anyway. Inside, the metal walls smelled faintly like mildew and machine oil. I stepped in with the towels over one arm, ice bucket in the other hand, pillow under my elbow, like the dumbest room service cart in history. The doors closed. The panel glowed 1, then 2, then, for one slow, bright second, 3. The elevator jolted. Not up. Wrong. Like it had slid sideways through something before finishing the rise. The doors opened onto a corridor that should not have fit inside the building I had driven to. The first thing I noticed was the carpet. Floral. Old. Not motel neutral, but the kind of pattern somebody picked in 1996 because it hid ash and coffee stains and cigarette burns equally well. The second thing I noticed was the smell. Ice machine, cold, bleach, damp plaster, a sweet stale smoke that did not belong to a fresh fire, only to a place that had once been hot and never entirely cooled in memory. The walls were papered in a faded stripe pattern the real motel did not have anywhere. Room numbers ran down both sides: 301, 303, 305, 307, all the way to 319. A vending sign hung crooked at the far end. The light was softer than downstairs, almost yellow, like older bulbs behind old plastic covers. And everywhere, beneath everything, the compressor hum. Not loud, steady, like the whole floor breathed through an ice machine. No screaming, no lunging shapes. That made it worse. A TV murmured through one wall. An ice bucket clinked somewhere ahead. A toilet flushed 2 rooms down. Normal motel sounds, all slightly too careful. Then a man's voice from behind 307 said, "About time." I almost dropped everything. I forced myself to walk. Staff pace, not guest pace. I do not know if that distinction mattered to the floor or only to me, but I held onto it hard. At 305, the door stood open 3 inches on the chain. A hand came through the gap, holding a stack of small bills, folded lengthwise. Old bills, soft from being carried too long. "For the ice," a woman said from inside. I did not take them. I did not stop. At 307, another chain-latched crack of dark. A man's eye in the gap, calm as checkout. "2 towels," he said. I handed them through without seeing the rest of him. His fingers were cold. Not corpse, cold. Lobby railing at 3 in the morning. cold. And the pillows? He asked. I kept moving. The hallway did not like that. I know that sounds impossible, but I do not have a cleaner sentence. The lights above me dimmed one level. 2 more phones started ringing behind closed doors. At the far end, just before the vending sign, room 312 stood open wider than the others. Inside, the husband from 214 sat on the edge of the bed, bucket beside his foot, TV on, shoes neatly placed under the desk. He was reading the little motel information card like a man killing time before morning. Hey, I said. He looked up. His face was his. That was the worst relief I felt all night, because it left room for a different horror. Your wife is looking for you. He frowned the way tired guests do when they are interrupted mid-thought. Checkout still 11? He asked. No, you're not checked in here. That made his face change. Not fear, offense. I have the key, he said. He held up a damn plastic card. 312. You came up for ice, I said. Yeah. And? He looked around the room as if I'd asked a rude question in somebody else's house. And then I got in. On the dresser sat one of the old boxy motel Bibles, a sweating paper cup, and a wrapped mint with the old redwood logo stamped on it. The curtains were shut, but not all the way. Through the gap, I could see dark glass and nothing beyond it. No parking lot, no pines, no service road, just a black surface holding a faint reflection of the room like an unlit TV. You need to come downstairs. He shook his head slowly. They haven't brought the second bucket yet. 1 room down, somebody knocked from the inside of a door. Not hard. Patient. Then another voice, female this time, called through 309. Can you tell them the pool gate's still locked? The pool downstairs had been filled with rocks years ago. I backed out of 312. The husband stood. So did at least 3 other shapes behind doors I had not seen move. I made the mistake then. Not a huge one, just a normal one. I looked at the room number plaque and said, Sir, there is no 312. Everything on the floor stopped. Not went quiet. Stopped. TV murmur dead. Phone rings dead. Compressor gone. The kind of silence you do not hear so much as feel enter your teeth. Then every room phone on the corridor rang at once. I ran. Not back to the elevator. That would have been smart, maybe, if the elevator had still been behaving like a machine. But when I looked that way, the doors were gone. Not vanished. Replaced by one more section of hallway I knew had not been there a second earlier. So I ran toward the vending sign at the far end. My brain had chosen that direction for one stupid practical reason. If the floor had an ice machine, it might have a service stair or maintenance hatch beside it. The floor knew how to be a motel. That meant it needed a back way for staff. Behind me, doors opened. No screams, no chase in the movie sense. Just dozens of ordinary motel room sounds happening at the exact same time. Deadbolt slides, chain catches, shoes on carpet, ice crack in a bucket, a wake-up radio clicking to life somewhere. When I reached the end of the hall, I found the ice machine alcove. Of course I did. Same recessed square as downstairs. Same machine shape. Same humming presence. Beside it, half hidden behind a housekeeping cart that looked newer than everything else, was a gray metal door marked Staff Only on a plaque so scratched it might have been original. It was locked. I dropped the pillow, shifted the bucket, shoved towels under one arm, and rammed the master ring at the knob until something turned. The door opened inward on a narrow concrete stairwell that smelled like rust and old rain. I stepped inside and pulled it almost shut. The hallway outside stayed politely still for 2 full breaths. Then someone knocked. 3 clean taps. A woman's voice, pleasant and patient. "You left without the change." Then another, farther down. The second bucket. Then the husband from 214, from right beside the door, though I had not heard him cross. "My wife's waiting?" I did not answer. Celia had not said not to answer back. She had not needed to. I climbed, up 1 flight, then another, which made no sense because the motel only had 2 levels, and the 3rd floor I had just entered should have been the top of the building. At the landing above me sat an old red fire door push bar. Roof access. The lettering was faded, almost white. I hit it with my shoulder and stumbled into cold night rain. Real rain, real wind, real dark sky split by highway glow. I almost cried with relief. The roof was flat gravel with HVAC units, rusting vent pipes, and 1 low parapet wall looking over the U-shaped motel lot. Below me, the real 2nd floor breezeway stretched as it should. Ice machine alcove halfway down. Room 214 near the middle. Office lit at the bottom. No 3rd floor visible. Nothing above the 2nd floor roofline at all. My phone buzzed in my pocket so hard I nearly dropped the ice bucket. The woman from 214. I answered. "Where are you?" Her voice came through thin with panic and the office air behind it. "He came back." I stopped moving. "What?" "He walked in through the side door like he'd been outside. He says he just went for a cigarette." I looked back at the roof access door. Still closed. Still ordinary gray. "Does he remember talking to me?" "No." Then lower. "But there are wet cards all over the floor." I went down by the exterior service ladder, bolted to the back of the building because I no longer trusted any route that started inside. By the time I reached the office, the woman from 214 was sitting in one of the plastic lobby chairs with her arms folded so tightly across her chest, she looked cold. Her husband sat beside her, confused and irritated, like he had been accused of something boring. On the office floor between them lay 5 damp key cards, 307, 312, 305, 319, 301. I asked him what he remembered. "I went for ice," he said. "Machine was out. Came back." "You weren't gone 20 minutes?" "Maybe 2. His wife turned on him. "You were gone almost 40. He looked at her, then at me, then at the office windows, as if one of us must be staging an intervention badly. "I don't know what you want me to say." Neither did I. At 1:36, a trucker from 219 came down complaining that his key card stopped working and somebody had slid a mint under his door with a room number written on the wrapper. At 1:52, room 108 wanted to know why their wake-up call came at the wrong hour, with a woman politely asking whether the fire was still on 3. At 2:04, line 1 rang twice. I unplugged it, counted to 10, plugged it back in, and answered. "Celia, you went up." Not a question. "How did you know?" "Because if you hadn't, it would have stopped by now." I told her about 312, the staff stare, the roof, the husband returning with no memory. She let me finish. Then she said, "Listen carefully. The old owners kept the 3rd floor open after the county tagged it unsafe. Seasonal workers, cash guests, truckers nobody expected back, people who didn't ask why the top corridor smelled wrong. When the fire happened, the motel still had rooms occupied that weren't supposed to exist in the system anymore. Some got checked out, some didn't. The 3rd floor liked service, because service means occupancy. You are talking about this like it has habits. It does. How many people died? Long pause. Enough that the brand paid for a new roofline and a different room map. That is not a number. No, she said. It's a settlement. Rain tapped the office glass. Not hard. Just enough to make the neon vacancy sign smudge itself red across the floor. What happens at order close? I asked. Another pause. Depends what the occupied count is. Celia. If the floor still thinks it's serving guests by shift close, it usually wants a clock. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because there are sentences your body refuses to file anywhere except hysteria the first time you hear them. And you came back here anyway. Because nobody local will work nights anymore, and corporate won't close the property because the highway keeps feeding it. Because desperate places hire desperate people. Because I wanted you warned before they stiffed you and reposted the shift. That is not warning. That is aftercare. She accepted that. Fair. Then she said the most useful thing she had said all night. The compressor is the rhythm. The service cycle builds around it. If it goes quiet, the floor has trouble holding shape. The ice machine? The old roof unit feeding it. Third floor line never got fully cut. If you kill the compressor long enough to close audit, the rooms usually go dark. Usually? You're going to hate how often that word belongs here. She told me there was a locked mechanical cage on the roof behind the old sign mount. One shutoff switch, painted over twice. If the floor was active, I would hear the compressor through the wall before I saw the panel. I asked why she didn't tell me that first. Because if I'd said all this at 8:50, you'd have left, and they would have posted the shift again. Honest. Ugly. Probably true. At 2:21, the husband from 214 threw up in the parking lot. At 2:24, a key card slid under the office door from the outside. 319. At 2:28, room 108 checked out early without asking for a refund. At 2:31, the internal line rang and rang and rang until I unplugged the whole phone base from the wall. At 2:37, a little girl in yellow socks appeared in the office doorway, asking if the pool was open now. I did not recognize her from check-in. That doesn't mean much in a motel. Faces blur. Families arrive half asleep. But the look her mother gave me, 1 second later, when she came running barefoot from 206 and grabbed the child by the shoulders, told me the girl had not come downstairs by the stairs. She said the elevator door opened, the mother said. She said she heard kids. The child looked annoyed more than scared. There was a hallway, she said. I told them to pack and leave. No explanations. Just leave. Maybe they thought I was overreacting. Maybe they saw enough in my face not to argue. Either way, I watched them drive out in their minivan without going back for the refundable deposit. By 3 o'clock, 12 rooms were still occupied. Then the audit system refreshed itself. 18 occupied, not 26, not 12, 18. The extra 6 were not listed on the screen as room numbers. The ancient software only displayed a total count and a mismatch warning, but I did not need it to tell me where the missing rooms were. The compressor kicked on so hard, the office windows rattled. From the second floor breezeway came the sound of an ice bucket dropping and rolling in a long, slow curve that did not match the dimensions of the rear hallway. Then line 1 lit up. Even unplugged, it lit. I answered because by then I was beyond the dignity of pretending procedure could save me. No voice, just hallway sounds, a TV, a crying baby muffled through a wall, ice falling. Then a calm male voice I had not heard before said, "Night audit is late." The lights in the office dimmed one shade. On the monitor, the second floor corridor feed stretched, longer than before. Not just an extra alcove, a full impossible run of rooms beyond the ice machine, ending in a red exit sign I knew did not exist in the real building. And in that corridor, walking towards the camera with a stack of folded towels in her arms, was the woman from 214. I dropped the phone, spun. She was not in the lobby chair anymore. Her husband stood in the office doorway, holding one of the damn keys and looking ashamed in a way I did not trust. "She said she heard me call from upstairs," he said. I went past him so fast, I clipped the door frame with my shoulder. The second floor breezeway was empty, except for the spinning plastic bucket near the ice machine and a thin trail of water leading not to the elevator, not to the stairs, but to blank wall where the corridor should have ended. Only it did not look blank in person anymore. It looked like wallpaper someone had painted over too many times, flat from 10 feet away, architectural from 3. There was a brass room number plaque hanging in the middle of it, 314. I did not think. That had been my problem all night. Too much thinking, too much deciding whether the crazy explanation had earned its place. I shoved the wall where the plaque hung. My hand went through cool air and old cigarette smell. The corridor accepted me instantly, like staff returning from a smoke break. I heard the compressor everywhere now, not behind walls, in the carpet, in the old light covers. Doors along both sides stood wider than before, not welcoming, working, like the floor had shifted from waiting mode into full service. At 3:07, the male voice called, "Towels." At 3:09, a woman said, "The pool gate." At 3:14, I heard the woman from 214 crying and then trying very hard not to. The door was open half a foot. Inside, she stood by the window with her back to me, looking at whatever black surface passed for outside up there. On the bed sat an open duffel that had not belonged to her downstairs. Floral bedspread, Bible, ice bucket, mint on the desk. "Hey," I said. She turned slowly. Her face was wet, but not with tears. Condensation, like she had been standing inside a freezer that breathed. "I thought he was up here," she said. "He was. He isn't now. Come on." She glanced toward the bed. "They told me if we check out before dawn, they won't charge the extra night." That sentence did something bad to my spine, not because it was frightening in itself, because it sounded like a sentence she had not chosen, a motel sentence, a solved for line dropped into her mouth by a place built out of customer habits. I stepped in, grabbed her wrist, and the room reacted instantly. TV snapped on. The lamp beside the bed lit. The phone started ringing. And from the corridor, every service bell at once. I dragged her out. The hallway lights dropped to that yellow-brown tone old motels get right before a power sag. Doors opened wider. Not enough for bodies to flood out. Enough for hands, shoulders. Faces turned partway toward us with that same offended calm the man in 312 had worn. Not burned, not decomposed. That would have made it easier. They looked checked in, tired, waiting. People who had accepted lousy carpets, weak coffee, and one more night because the road was long and the place was cheap and they only needed it until morning. That was the real wrongness. The floor was not built from malice. It was built from routine. It wanted what the motel had always promised. Ice towels, late checkout one more night. I pulled the woman with me towards the far end service stair because I remembered the roof door from before. The elevator had vanished again behind fresh hallway. The nearer doors all seemed slightly more open than the ones at the far end, which felt like information I did not want to earn, but used anyway. We were halfway there when 312 opened. The husband stepped out. He looked more awake now, still himself, still not. "You forgot your bucket," he said. He held it out toward his wife, the way a husband might hold out lost keys in an ordinary parking lot after an ordinary argument. She made a sound then, not a scream, a broken little refusal sound people make before the full panic catches up. He took one step forward. Every other door opened another inch. I did the ugliest useful thing available to me. I threw the ice bucket I was carrying at his chest. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to spill. Ice exploded across the hallway. The compressor stuttered. Every light on the floor flickered in the same broken rhythm. He froze, not because he was hit, because something about the service cycle had been interrupted. I ran with the woman still gripping my hand. At the end of the hall, the gray staff stair door stood shut, locked. Of course it was. The master ring shook in my hand as I tried keys blind. Behind us, phone ring started again. Fast now, irritated. The woman's breathing went sharp and shallow. I could feel her trying not to yank away and run in whatever direction looked easiest. The fourth key turned. Concrete stairwell. Rust. Rain smell above. We got 2 flights up before the corridor door behind us started opening and closing by itself in slow hydraulic pulls. On the roof, the rain had thickened, not storm hard, enough to make every surface slick and every HVAC unit shine dull silver in the lot light. The compressor hum was louder out there, coming from a fenced mechanical cage behind the giant dead redwood sign mount. Celia had been right. I could hear it before I reached it. The woman asked what I was doing. Trying to make it forget we're guests. That made no sense. It also happened to be true. The chain on the cage was locked with a rusted brass padlock. I hit it with the master ring box first. Nothing. Then with the heavy flashlight from my pocket. Still nothing. On the third hit, the lock slipped against the wet metal and snapped open like it had been waiting for a better excuse. Inside the cage sat a compressor unit far older than the rest of the roof equipment. Original maybe. Iceline pipe running down through the building like a vein that never got removed. One red-painted shut-off switch, layered over with 2 coats of motel beige. I pulled it down. The hum stopped. Below us, the entire motel seemed to exhale. Every breezeway light went out at once, not permanently, for one long, impossible second. Then the emergency strips clicked on. The woman beside me grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. We both heard it, not from the corridor, from the lot below. Dozens of room doors, opening and slamming in no order at all, like guests all over the property had reached the same late decision at once. I looked over the parapet. The real second floor was there, the real parking lot, the real office, and on the breezeway below, 3 damp key cards slid one after another out of the ice machine tray and fell to the concrete. Nothing else moved. Then the office door burst open and Celia ran out into the lot in rain gear, hair plastered to her face, carrying a bolt cutter in one hand and a coil of yellow caution rope in the other. She looked up, saw me on the roof, and pointed to the exterior surface ladder. "Get down," she shouted. "Now, while it's blind." That phrase has never left me. Blind, like the floor was not gone, only between frames. We got down the back ladder with rain turning every rung slick as fish skin. I nearly lost my footing twice. The woman from 214 cried the whole way, without making much sound, like she did not want whatever still listened up there to hear the shape of her fear. By the time we hit the lot, her husband stood barefoot beside the office door in the rain, looking around as if he had just woken from a nap in a place he did not remember entering. Celia marched past him, grabbed the damp keys from the ground, and clipped them in half with the bolt cutter one by one. 307, 312, 319. The sound that followed each cut was not dramatic. No scream, no burst of light, only the small, ugly snap of cheap plastic giving way. She handed me the caution rope. Tie the ice machine shut. With what? Anything that makes it slower. We wrapped the machine doors, then the alcove rail, then the vending machine beside it, until the whole recess looked less like maintenance and more like a crime scene that had learned embarrassment. At 3:48, the audit software refreshed. 12 occupied. Exact. No mismatch. At 3:52, the woman from 214 got her husband into their room and locked the deadbolt. At 4:03, room 219 checked out with no refund request, saying only that he preferred driving tired to staying under whoever's midnight children. One more minute. At 4:17, Celia made fresh coffee with hands steady enough to suggest she had done all of this before and hated herself for being good at it. That was when she finally told me the piece that made everything worse in a very human way. The old owners had not kept the third floor open because they believed in ghosts or cursed hallways or anything dramatic enough to belong in a story. They kept it open because they could get away with it. A few extra cash rooms on sold-out weekends, travelers with no receipts, seasonal crews who paid under the table, people too tired or too far from home to notice the hallway smelled strange and the sprinkler heads looked older than the rest of the building. When the fire came, some of the people upstairs were not in the official occupancy count because officially they had never been checked in. So afterward, all the numbers were wrong. Claims, settlements, bodies, room lists. Families told their people had not been on site. The brand remodeled, renumbered, paid, and moved on. But the service cycle, the part of the building that knew towels from sheets and checkouts, from stays, and the compressor from morning, had learned a lesson the accountants had not. Occupied is occupied. That was all it kept. No moral, no justice, just habit. At 5:11, dawn started thinning the lot into ordinary angles again. The pines behind the diner stopped looking like a wall and turned back into trees. The vacancy sign looked broken instead of coded. The pool was just a hole full of gravel. Celia counted out my cash from the office safe and added the promised extra without making me ask. The bills were damp around the edges, as if everything in that building had been sweating quietly for years. "You should not take shifts off latchwork anymore," she said. "You say that like there are healthier hobbies for people with $83 in checking." She did not argue. She only slid a folded motel brochure across the counter. Not the redwood, Another place, different town, different highway. On the back, she had written one sentence. If the building has an exterior ice machine and the top floor feels too quiet, leave before midnight. I kept that brochure for months. Then I burned it. Burning it did not help. I did not go back to Redwood. I never even took the service road past exit 61, again, if I could avoid it. The boards kept trying to send me there for weeks though, not always by name. Sometimes the listing was for night guest services. So, the woman from 214 texted me once, about a month later, to say her husband still woke up some nights, asking whether the second bucket ever made it. Then her number disconnected. I've thought about them more than they would probably like. Celia quit for real, at least according to the only local review site that still had the motel listed. 3 months after that, Redwood changed names. New sign, new website, drone shots that never showed the second floor breezeway for more than a second at a time. The pool was still full of rocks in the photos. The vacancy sign was cropped out. For a few weeks, distance felt like a plan. Then it stopped feeling like one. I still use motels sometimes, when work pushes me too far from home to drive back the same night. Budget places, mostly, because the money problem did not vanish, just because the building tried to adopt me for one shift. And sometimes, always after midnight, I hear that same compressor cough from a breezeway machine before I even touch the button. Not every trip, not often enough to become routine, just enough. The first time it happened after Redwood, I was outside Amarillo, at a place with exactly 2 floors, a boarded hot tub, and a lobby clock who looked 19. I heard the cough. I looked down. A damn card sat in the tray. 307, different motel, different state, same handwritten label. I left without checking out. Now I stay away from exterior ice machines completely. I buy bagged ice at gas stations and keep it in the sink. I ask for first floor rooms, even when I know it changes nothing. If a motel says fresh towels on request after midnight, I take extra before I close the door. And if somebody on the other side of a late night service desk ever tells me the machine is old with that flat little pause after it, like the sentence has been used too many times already, I do not smile and pretend I understand. I leave. What stays with me is not the dead third floor itself. It is how little imagination Redwood had. It did not want revenge. It did not want confession. It did not even really want me. It wanted a clerk, an occupied count, a second bucket. One more night somebody was too tired or too broke to question. Last winter, during sleet outside Tulsa, I woke to something tapping my motel door in sets of 3. Not knocking, plastic tapping. I stayed in bed and watched the chain latch tremble until the sound stopped. At checkout, I opened the door. No one there. Just a damp key card on the mat. No room number on the sleeve. Only the old Redwood logo in washed out red and one sentence written across the white strip in motel pen. Ice machine, out of order. Use the 1 on 3. The last broadcast from Bell Creek Weather Station used my mother's voice. My mother had been dead 8 years when the weather radio on my workbench said my address in her voice. If it had only been the voice, grief could have explained it. Grief is willing to do cheap little magic tricks if you give it enough dark and enough unfinished feelings. A garage at night is perfect for that. The bulb over my bench always hums half a note too high. The concrete holds cold even in spring. Every shelf in there is stacked with dead machines waiting for one more useful part to be pulled from them. It is exactly the kind of room where a person can hear someone they miss and blame the wrong thing. It was the instruction that made that impossible. Occupant at 41, Mercer cutoff. Clear the north room now. Window failure, likely. I froze with a screwdriver in one hand and an open chassis in front of me. The voice came from a Grey County weather radio base unit I had not even finished cleaning yet. The speaker crackled under a wash of static and then settled into her again. Not a close imitation, not a similar tone. My mother exactly, right down to the little breath she used to take before the important part of a sentence, like she was stepping into cold water. Repeat. Occupant at 41, Mercer cutoff. Clear the north room now. Window failure, likely. I'd been in the garage since 9, trying to see what in the Bell Creek lot was worth reselling and what was only good for scrap. The private salvage board had listed it as decommissioned county weather equipment. One lot. Pickup only. No warranty. I bought it because work had been thin for a month and bad decisions start sounding efficient when rent is waiting. 3 days a week I do bench repairs for a marine electronics shop off the bypass. The rest of the time I flip old radios, CB rigs, dispatch consoles, anything with enough metal and enough niche buyers to survive one more owner. A whole emergency alert lot is normally too expensive for me, but this one went up on a private municipal disposal board called Relay Yard with 2 blurry photos and a closing window of 40 minutes. The seller either did not know what was in it or wanted it gone quietly. The lot gave me a steel rack unit with peeling county inventory tags, a desk mic, 3 weather radios, an old encoder panel, a crate of manuals swollen from humidity, and 2 cassettes rubber banded together inside a zip bag. The listing title was plain: Bell Creek Weather Station Remote Package. I knew the name from childhood. Bell Creek sat up on the ridge south of town, where the tower and warning horns covered the valley roads that the state system always reached last. My mother used to do some voice work for them, not full-time, not some glamorous secret career. She hosted Saturday farm reports on the local AM station, read school closing spots in winter, and every once in a while the county paid her a little extra to record alert phrases because the emergency office figured folks listened faster to a voice they recognized. She thought the whole thing was vaguely silly. She called it lunch money work and did it in a spare studio that smelled like coffee and cassette dust. I used to sit on the lobby floor with a vending machine root beer and wait for her to finish saying lines like "seek interior shelter" and "avoid low water crossings" in a tone that sounded calm enough to make other people borrow it. Hearing that same voice come out of a dirty radio on my bench did something ugly to the middle of me. I set the screwdriver down, leaned closer, and said, "Who's doing this?" That was the first bad decision. The desk mic for the Bell Creek unit was clipped beside the rack. I had plugged it in 20 minutes earlier just to see whether the power supply would carry load. Without really thinking, I thumbed the transmit bar and repeated myself into the mic. "Who's using this frequency?" The carrier light flashed once. A soft relay click answered from somewhere inside the rack. Then the garage went quiet, except for the rain ticking faintly on the backlot fence. Outside, the storm had not even reached us yet. The weather app on my phone showed a broken green line still 20 minutes west. Wind had picked up some, but nothing dramatic. My house stood dark behind the garage. 1-story, blue siding, narrow hall, 2 bedrooms. The north room had belonged to my mother before it became storage. After she died, I moved back in because keeping her house was cheaper than renting anything decent in town. I told myself the alert had to be a prank embedded in the unit, some old county test message triggered by power. Then the weather radio spoke again, still in her voice, but flatter now. Operator acknowledged. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff remains active. Move to interior hall until front passes. Operator acknowledged. I looked at the mic in my hand. Then a branch came through the north room window, hard enough to sound like a shotgun inside the house. Glass burst outward in a bright sideways spray. The garage shook. Somewhere in the kitchen, another radio started screaming, the old, same warning tone, that mechanical animal sound that goes straight through your spine before your brain catches up. I ran. The hallway smelled like damp drywall and the faint old lady lavender my mother had liked in winter. Wind pushed rain through the broken north room window in short, vicious breaths. One heavy limb from the pecan tree had snapped off and driven halfway across the room, crushing plastic storage tubs and pinning the curtain rod against the dresser. Glass glittered over the floor and over the banker boxes stacked under the window. One box had split open. Cassettes and index cards had spilled across the rug in a wet little fan. The kitchen radio kept talking. Remain in interior hall. Window failure confirmed. Do not use the north room. My mother had always sounded most convincing when she was telling somebody something obvious in a calm voice, like calm itself was part of the instruction. Hearing that tone attached to the proof in front of me did more damage than the branch. I stepped back into the hall and stood there, with rainwater blowing cold against my ankles, listening to my dead mother explain why I should not stand in a room I had just watched come apart. The message repeated twice more. Between cycles, I pulled the plug on the kitchen unit. That killed the sound for maybe 4 seconds. Then my truck, parked under the side awning, lit up through the rain and started broadcasting the same alert through the dashboard weatherband. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff remains active. Maintain interior position. That was when fear finally stopped trying to be reasonable. I killed the breaker to the garage and house radios and spent the next hour moving from room to room with a flashlight, unplugging anything with a speaker, as if Bell Creek might be hiding in the toaster next. The storm line passed fast. By midnight, the wind had dropped to drizzle, and the house had settled back into ordinary damage. Wet carpet, broken glass, insurance headache. The radio stayed silent. Silence would have helped if I could trust it. I went back into the north room with work gloves and started pulling branches away from the broken tubs. One of the cassettes on the floor had a white paper label softened by rain. The ink had bled, but not enough to hide the words. Bell Creek, all clear, /road, closed, /do not travel. My mother's handwriting. The second tape read, Bell Creek, shelter intake, /county, 8/Mercer route. That second label mattered later. At 1 a.m, I stacked both tapes on the kitchen counter, sat in a dining chair with the lights on, and tried to think like a repairman instead of like a son. The Bell Creek rack had power. The weather line outside had enough static. My mother had recorded Bell Creek phrases years ago. All those facts could coexist without the supernatural. What I did not have a clean explanation for was the address, or the timing, or the branch. I also did not have a clean explanation for why the powered down desk mic in the garage had one tiny red indicator still glowing when I checked it again before bed. I didn't sleep much. Every time the house creaked, I thought another voice was about to start. At 6:42 a.m., before I had even made coffee, the truck radio turned on by itself and said, "Operator at Mercer Cutoff, do not transport equipment south before dusk." The truck keys were in my hand. The Bell Creek rack was already strapped in the bed. I had planned to haul the whole lot to the marine shop, test it there, and make the problem somebody else's fluorescent nightmare. Instead, I stood under the awning in my work boots, staring through the windshield at my mother's voice coming out of an engine that wasn't running. That changed the day. I drove north instead, toward Harlan's feed store on Route 12, because if anyone in the county still knew Bell Creek hardware, it would be him. Harlan sold seed, batteries, fence wire, and a suspiciously good assortment of used antennas out of a cinder block building that smelled like oil, dog food, and coffee burnt down to black syrup. He had done tower maintenance and radio installs long enough that half the farmers west of town still treated him like weather authority with better jokes. He was refilling the chest fridge with bait when I carried in the Bell Creek desk mic and set it on the counter. His hand stopped on the glass bottle door. "Where'd you pull that from?" "Private disposal board." "That's not disposal," he said. "That's leakage." I told him about Relay Yard. I told him about the first alert. I did not mention my mother right away, because saying that part out loud made the whole thing sound like the kind of story decent people back away from before it can become their responsibility. Harlan turned the mic over, checked the inventory tag, and got very still around the eyes. "You powered the rack?" "Yeah." "You talk into it?" That pause gave him my answer before I spoke. "Once." He set the mic down carefully, like it might stain the counter. "Then you keyed the rote." "What does that mean?" He looked toward the front windows before answering, though there was nobody in the lot but my truck and his dented county surplus van. Bell Creek had a house-by-house override mode for the ridge roads, he said. Storm nights, flood nights, bad hail nights, anything where the general county code wasn't enough. You could issue location-specific instructions by route set. Half the county ignored the machine voice, so emergency management cut local voice packets for the stubborn areas. Your mother's was one of them. I know she recorded for them. Knowing she recorded and knowing what Bell Creek turned into are different things. He poured coffee into a paper cup and did not offer me any. Toward the end, Bell Creek quit behaving like a regular station, started finishing the wrong jobs. A front would move through, danger would pass, and the tower would still be talking to structures like the county was half evacuated. People heard useful instructions first, which made the later ones harder to refuse. Get out of this room, stay off this road, use the south route, report to intake. Enough of it was right to borrow trust. You're saying the station killed people? I'm saying there were nights when folks followed Bell Creek later than they should have. He said it in that rural way some people do when the direct version still lives too close. I told him my house address had been in the alert. That hit him harder than the rest. Mercer cutoff? 41. He let out a breath and rubbed his knuckles against his mouth. Your mother used that house for line checks, he said. Reception there was always patchy on the first sweep because of the low cedar behind the ditch and the way the slope rolls. Bell Creek tested the Mercer route through that address for years. If you woke the old rack and answered from the same house, those voice packets were calibrated against. He stopped and shook his head. That would have felt like a hand fitting back into an old glove. The store radio on the shelf above the bait fridge crackled. Both of us looked up. Harlan did not move fast. He moved like someone who had once learned exactly how fast panic became permission. The radio tone sounded. Then my mother said, Operator at Mercer Cutoff, do not use County 8 South after 6:15 p.m. Route compromised. Shelter intake remains available through Bell Creek Service Road. Harlan reached up and switched the radio off. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. You hear that? I asked, which was a useless question, but fear like ceremony. I heard it. What does route compromise mean? It means Bell Creek has moved on from telling you where not to stand. He looked at the mic again. It's starting the road sequence. He would not touch the rack. He would not come out to the truck and look at the rest of the lot. What he did do was walk into the back office and bring me an old county access badge on a blue lanyard, one brass key, and a folded photocopy of a road map with Bell Creek circled in red pen. I should throw your whole truck into the quarry, he said. But if it keyed under Mercer, it might keep chasing the route even without power. Bell Creek sits off Service Road 19, south of the grain silos. Do not take County 8 if the radio tells you not to. Do not answer any transmission. Do not go into the shelter room if you hear intake voices. Intake voices? He looked past me through the window and said, My brother followed a late Bell Creek route in 2017. His truck got found at the low water bridge with the weather radio still on. I don't need to hear the rest of that building again. That shut me up. He handed me the map anyway. If you can kill the local control, kill it. If you can't, get rid of the rack without crossing a route it names. And if you hear your mother tell you Bell Creek is the safest place left, understand that's just the station wearing a familiar coat. I wish that last sentence had sounded theatrical. It would have made it easier to dismiss. Instead, it sounded tired. I took the map home, parked under the awning, and spent the next 2 hours in the wrecked north room, sorting through my mother's soaked boxes while contractors promised callbacks they were never going to make. Under old tax folders and station invoices, I found a yellow Bell Creek volunteer windbreaker, a spiral notebook full of recording notes, and 3 more labeled tapes in plastic sleeves. She had scribbled reminders to herself beside some phrases: smile less on tornado warnings, slower on county roads, say crossing, not bridge, for the old folks near Mercer. Those notes hurt more than the voice. The voice belonged to memory. The notes belonged to a working person still standing in a booth somewhere, trying to do a small job well. On one page near the back, she had written, if they ever use shelter intake packet after the front passes, something is wrong. No date, no explanation, just that line and a coffee ring over the margin. I stared at it until the kitchen radio, unplugged on the counter, came to life anyway. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff. Stage transport item. Do not delay beyond dusk. The tape labeled all clear/road closed sat inches from the radio speaker. That was when the shape of the day changed again. Fear stopped being passive. I wanted to know what Bell Creek thought I was transporting and why it cared about dusk. The rack unit was still in my truck bed under a tarp. The cassettes had come out of the same lot. Maybe the station wanted its own voice bank back. Maybe it wanted a control head. Maybe it only wanted movement. I called the county emergency management office and got bounced 3 times before a woman with a clipped professional tone said Bell Creek operations had been retired and all legacy hardware issues had to be directed through state surplus. When I mentioned house-specific broadcasts using a dead volunteer's voice, her silence lasted long enough to feel structured. "Sir," she said, "do not reactivate decommissioned county equipment. Bit late for that. Then do not travel to Bell Creek without notifying local law enforcement." "Why?" "Because the property is condemned." "That doesn't explain the road alerts." "No," she said, "it doesn't." Then she hung up. I drove to the emergency management annex anyway, because the county building sits only 15 minutes from my house, and I was past the point where polite warnings improved my behavior. The annex looked exactly like every low-slung government office built in the late 90s. Beige block walls, flagpole out front, a row of storm-shuttered windows, 3 county pickups, and the permanent smell of old copier toner once you stepped inside. A deputy at the front desk listened to me just long enough to decide I was either a nuisance or a man one more sentence away from a welfare check. While he made that choice, I looked past him through an open side office and saw a wall map covered in colored route lines. Most were new laminated strips. One older paper sheet underneath had Bell Creek handwritten in black marker and a cluster of parcel dots around Mercer, County 8, and the Ridge Road south of the silos. Some of those dots had X marks. One still had a circle around it. My house. The deputy noticed where I was looking and moved sideways just enough to block the door. "You need to leave that stuff alone," he said. "That route map has my address on it. Then you especially need to leave it alone." "What happened in 2017? His mouth flattened. "Storm response. That's not an answer. It's the one you're getting." I could have pushed harder. I knew it. But government fear has its own smell, and whatever sat behind that office door was not a public facts kind of fear. It was the quieter kind people use when they have been told there is already one official story and their job depends on not adding edges to it. I left with less information than I wanted and more confirmation than I could comfortably carry. On the drive back, the truck radio stayed silent until I reached the turn for County 8 South. Then my mother said, "Do not use County 8 South. Road compromised. Use service. Road 19. I took County 8 anyway. Curiosity is only dignity wearing a nicer shirt. The road dipped between pasture and creek bed for about 4 miles before the low water bridge. I had crossed it 100 times growing up. That afternoon, the sky was flat and pale, nothing dramatic in it, but runoff from the morning storm had turned the creek fast and brown. 50 yards before the bridge, I came around the bend and found county barricades already up. One side of the guardrail had torn loose and sagged into the water. Mud and branches were pressed against the supports high enough to show the creek had run over sometime within the last hour. The route had been compromised, not in some vague poetic sense. Literally. I sat in the truck with both hands on the wheel and understood the trap more clearly than I wanted to. Bell Creek did not start with lies. It started with useful information. Useful enough to make a person take the second instruction seriously. Useful enough to make you forget that no dead voice should know the shape of your day this well. Back at the house, dusk came on slow and metallic. Clouds built again to the west. The weather app showed a fresh storm line, wider than the first. Every time I thought about waiting until morning, one of the unplugged radios clicked softly, as if something in its plastic were clearing its throat. At 6:07 p.m., before the first drop hit the roof, 3 devices spoke at once. The kitchen radio, the truck, the Bell Creek rack under the top, outside. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff. Begin route through Service Road 19. Shelter intake open. Do not delay. I opened the truck bed, pulled the top back, and saw the rack panel lit green through the rain. I had disconnected it hours earlier. The power leads hung loose. The desk mic lay on top. Red transmit light dead, but the encoder face glowed like a patient thing under skin. I grabbed the all-clear cassette, Harlan's County badge, the old brass key, and the map. Then I did the one sensible thing I had done all day. I left the north room empty and the rest of the house dark. If Bell Creek wanted the Mercer address live, it could have the shell without me in it. The drive south along Service Road 19 ran between grain silos, black drainage ditches, and a strip of pines bent inland by years of wind. Rain started halfway there, a fine, steady sheet that took the world down to headlights and fence posts. Twice, I passed parked vehicles on the shoulder with no one inside. One had an orange magnetic light on top and county plates. The other was an old half-ton pickup with a weather radio, still talking through the open driver's door. I did not stop to listen. Bell Creek rose out of the weather the way ugly public buildings always do, all at once. Chain link fence, cinder block station house, one tall tower with the aviation light dark, 2 horn speakers on concrete poles angled over the valley, a detached generator shed. The county cell had been painted over on the front sign, but not thoroughly. You could still see the ghost circle under the gray. The front gate stood chained. Harlan's brass key fit the side service lock after 3 tries and a lot of swearing. Inside the fence, the station smelled of wet weeds and old batteries. The first horn speaker came alive when I hit the front steps. Mercer route confirmed. Proceed to intake. My mother's voice again, but thinner up close, stretched through metal and rain. I went inside anyway. The control room looked less haunted than abandoned. That was worse. Dust on the consoles. Emergency binders curled at the edges. Coffee rings, fossilized into the laminate. One panel rack still awake on backup power. Beside it sat the same model remote head I had in my truck lot, only this one was hardwired into a shelf of blinking relays. Someone had tagged half the switches with masking tape years ago. Most labels had browned into illegibility, but one still read, Local Route Override. Another read, Voice Bank, B. The storm outside deepened. The horn speakers shifted to a different cycle, quieter now, more intimate. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff. Intake remains below. Do not stay in the control room. Below. There was a stairwell at the back of the room marked Shelter. When I opened that door, cold, damp air came up from the dark, carrying the smell of mildew, wet canvas, and old coffee. Somewhere under that, something else. the odor of a building that had been sealed before it finished drying out from whatever happened inside it. Voices drifted up the stairwell, not loud, conversation volume. A woman asking if cots were still open. A man wanting to know whether County 8 had washed again. A child somewhere saying he needed the bathroom. Intake voices. Harlan's words came back so hard I had to grip the door frame. Do not go into the shelter room if you hear intake voices. I shut the stairwell door and forced myself to look at the console instead of the dark below it. The Bell Creek system wasn't hidden. That annoyed me more than it should have. Whatever it was doing it with county equipment and old procedures and a backup circuit no one had bothered to fully kill. The supernatural part, if there was one, had grown inside habit the same way mold grows inside drywall. Quiet, administrative, fed by neglect. On a shelf above the board sat a tape deck with one cassette already loaded. A paper strip under the window read, Mercer/County 8/Shelter Intake. Voice Bank B. My hand shook a little when I ejected it. Inside was one of my mother's Bell Creek tapes. Not a copy, not a digital clone. The white label was hers. The corner had the tiny half-moon scratch she used to make with her thumbnail when she was nervous in the studio. I had not brought her voice to Bell Creek. Bell Creek had never given it up. That was what the lot on Relay Yard had been. A remote package, a detached head, and support equipment from this room. When I powered it at Mercer and keyed the mic, the local system woke and looked for the route it still knew best. The Mercer route. My mother's route. The same one that must have been active the last night the station failed to stop. I found the old log binder 2 shelves down. The last completed page was from April 19th, 2017. Severe line winds. Flash flood warning. County 8 bridge unstable. Mercer route active. Shelter intake opened 2114. Then a series of handwritten notes, each shakier than the last. County dispatch link, intermittent. Continue local by voice packet. Mercer acknowledged. County 8 compromised. Use service. Road 19. Intake, count, mismatch. Do not continue. After all clear. The final note had been carved so hard into the paper, it nearly tore through. If voice. Bank does not drop. Cut local. No signature. No record that anyone had ever done it. The stairwell handle rattled once behind me. Not violent. Testing. I took the all-clear cassette from my pocket and slid it into the second tape deck. The console had a row of source switches. Bell, AUX, test, local, tape A, tape B. I understood just enough old equipment to be dangerous and not enough to feel good about it. The local route override switch was still up. One of the relay lights beneath it pulsed in time with the distant horn cycle. When I hit play on tape B, the reels turned, but no audio came through. I checked the patch bay. Somebody had physically pulled the tape input for the all-clear deck and tied it off with electrical tape years ago. That felt intentional in the worst possible way. The voices from below got clearer, not louder, closer. A folding chair scraped. A man coughed wetly. Then my mother spoke from the horn outside and from the rack in front of me and from somewhere behind the stairwell door all at once. Mercer route overdue. Proceed to intake now. The shelter handle lifted against the latch. I stripped the electrical tape with my teeth and jammed the loose lead into the nearest open input that matched the deck. Still nothing. Then I saw the real problem. The console wanted a live keyed source before it would switch off the root cycle. Bell Creek had not stayed active because it lacked an all clear. It had stayed active because the route loop still believed arrivals were pending. You don't end intake while the system thinks people are on the road. My mother had written the answer years before without giving me the last line outright. All clear / road closed / do not travel, not shelter open, not intake complete, road closed. The route had to be made impossible. I hit the transmit bar on the desk mic and nearly dropped it when my own voice cracked in my ear through the monitor speaker. Bell Creek Locale, I said. County 8 is closed. Service Road 19 is closed. Shelter intake is closed. Do not travel. The board lit up angry amber. 1 relay clacked off. 3 stayed on. From outside the horn, my mother's voice answered over mine like a correction. Proceed to intake. Wrong move. The system wanted trusted voice, not mine. I shoved the mic down, hit play on the tape deck again, and this time pressed the patch cord deeper with my thumb until the cracked jack found contact. Tape hiss flooded the room. Then my mother, younger and cleaner than the horn version, filled the speaker. This is a Bell Creek weather update for the Mercer route and County 8 corridor. County 8 is closed. Service Road 19 is closed. Do not travel to shelter intake. Remain clear of Bell Creek until county notice. Repeat, do not travel. The effect was immediate. The horn outside cut off mid-cycle. The relay lights on the board started dropping one by one. Down the stairwell, the intake voices did not scream or rage or do anything cinematic. They just began to blur, like a waiting room heard through water. Chair scrape, cough, a soft child complaint, then less again. I stood there holding the patch cord in place while the tape ran. Halfway through the second repetition, thunder hit the tower, close enough to punch the lights white for a split second. Every monitor in the room flashed. On one dead black screen, for that instant only, I saw a shelter full of people in wet county ponchos and motel blankets sitting on folding chairs under fluorescent spill. Not rotting, not spectral in the storybook sense, just waiting with the blank patience of people who have been told the road will reopen soon. Then the screen went dark again. The tape wobbled near the end. Old cassette warble, stretched by age and damp. My mother's voice dropped half a note and threatened to chew itself apart right before the last line. I held the machine with one hand, as if steadiness in my palm could become steadiness in the motor. Do not travel, she said again, softer now, through the failing tape, and stay out of the north room until... The cassette clicked, stopped. That last phrase was not on the label. Maybe she had reused the tape. Maybe it had stretched from years in the box, under my mother's window. Maybe Bell Creek had taken the piece it needed and left me the warning. The control room went almost dark. Only one green LED remained lit near local route override. Then the horn speaker outside, with no tape running and no deck engaged, gave me one final message in my mother's voice. Operator at Mercer cutoff. Route suspended. The last green light died. Everything after that turned ordinary too fast. The storm was still outside. Rain on roof. Water down the gutter run. Wind through chain link. But the building itself changed the second the panel went dead. It lost that held breath feeling. The control room became what it had looked like on entry. A neglected county station with dust in the vents and a condemned shelter below. I never opened the stairwell again. Maybe there was nothing in the room beneath it except cots, mold, and my own imagination after too much adrenaline. Maybe that would be the version a sensible person preferred. I'm not a sensible person where Bell Creek is concerned anymore, but I still know the mercy of leaving one door closed when every other answer is already worse than you needed. I took the 2 deck cassettes, the root log binder, and the Bell Creek desk mic. I pulled the local control fuse for good measure. On the way out, I cut the cable run feeding the horn speakers with the emergency shears from the wall kit. It felt symbolic more than necessary, but symbolism matters when you are trying to teach your body that a voice is just hardware again. The drive home under the back edge of the storm took longer than the drive out. The road seemed ordinary. That made me distrust it more. Twice I passed the empty vehicles on the shoulder again. The county truck remained. The old pickup did not. My house was dark when I got back. Wet leaves plastered the siding. The north room window gaped black under the temporary top I had taped over it before leaving. I carried the Bell Creek tapes inside, set them on the kitchen table, and waited for some other speaker in the house to wake up. Nothing did. By morning, that nothing had weight to it. The county came and took the binder after I made enough noise that a man in a state jacket showed up without a local deputy. He asked for the Bell Creek material as if it were evidence and contamination at the same time. I gave him copies of the log pages and kept the original cassette my mother had labeled "All Clear." I did not argue when he said the station had suffered legacy control failure. Harlan never asked what I saw in the control room. He only asked one question. "Did you hear intake?" I said yes. He nodded once and went back to pricing fence staples. The county fenced Bell Creek tighter after that. 2 weeks later, a contractor convoy went up the service road and came back down with cut tower sections on flatbeds. That should have settled it into memory. It did not. 3 months later, under clear sky, the little bedside weather radio I had bought brand new from a hardware store clicked on at 2:11 a.m. and said, in my mother's voice, "Occupant at Mercer Cutoff. Stay clear of the north room." No tones, no storm, just that. I replaced every radio in the house after that. Then the truck head unit. Then the garage power supply I had used on the Bell Creek rack. It changed nothing. Now the warnings come irregularly enough to prevent routine and often enough to ruin comfort. Some are practical. Last winter, during freezing rain, the kitchen set woke at 5:03 a.m. and told me not to take the east steps. An hour later, the bottom tread sheared loose under a delivery driver. In August, the truck radio told me to stop before the rail crossing south of the quarry. The freight train that stalled there 5 minutes later blocked the road for 2 hours. That is the part that keeps me obedient. Bell Creek is still useful. Useful enough that some frightened, stupid piece of me listens for it. Useful enough that when my mother's voice says, "Stay out of a room," I stay out of it. Useful enough that every instruction feels like the first half of a favor and the second half of a debt. I still have the cassette from the north room floor in a kitchen drawer wrapped in a dish towel like it could bruise. I have played it exactly once since Bell Creek. The tape is warped near the end, but the line is there, just under the hiss. Do not travel and stay out of the north room until daylight. That is all. No shelter, no intake, no final explanation for why that room mattered to the root, Maybe because Bell Creek first learned my mother's voice there. Maybe because Mercer was always one of the test addresses. Maybe because roots, once they take hold of a house, keep one room marked for weather longer than the people inside deserve. I keep that room empty now except for a patched window, a bare dresser, and the old Bell Creek volunteer windbreaker hanging on the closet knob. Nothing stored there, nothing sentimental, nothing with speakers, and still, once in a while, usually when the sky's wrong, in a way my body notices before the forecast does, I will wake in the hallway to a voice I know better than my own, coming softly through the dark house with no source I can find. Occupant at Mercer Cutoff. A pause. That little breath before the important part. We are still clearing the road. The worst kind of evidence is the kind that proves something before it happens. A file, a clip, a poster. All three stories leave the same question behind. If the dark web showed you proof of your own future, would you try to stop it? Or would that be exactly how it starts?